what we're here to do is really receive comments on the priorities document that is at the back table back there. And what it is, very, very simple idea to take how we're going to score projects and reduce it to one sheet. And this is very high level. You got to think about it in terms of, are these the ideas, the themes, the things that are important? Did we miss something? Could we do it better? Do we need different categories? There's going to be a whole process behind this that gets to these scores. There's a 7-page application that's going to require a lot of technical data, but very simply, is this high-level document, does this get it? Or what did we miss? And so that's what I want to hear tonight. So before we do that, I'm going to go through just a little bit of background about the Deepwater Horizon and where we are right now. There's 3 main funding sources that came out of the BP oil spill. The first are the criminal penalties, also known as the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund, also known as NIFWIF. It's known as NIFWIF because the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Board actually oversees the distribution of those funds. And so the state makes recommendations, the board looks at those recommendations, and then they decide to fund them or not. They have not funded everything we've sent to them, but everything they have funded has come from the state of Texas, so they are working with us. That represents a little over $200 million that's coming to the state of Texas. The second main funding source is known as NRDA, Natural Resource Damage Assessment. This is a federal program that's been in place for many years, and the way to think about it is whenever there's something that affects the ecosystem or the environment, you go in, you try to measure what did that environment or ecosystem look like before the spill, or it could be a spill, it could be some sort of catastrophic release, it could be a ship dumping its bilge water into some place it shouldn't be. But what did it look like before the incident, and then what did it look like afterwards? And there's typically a gap. So you say ecosystem was here, now it's here, and then you try to monetize that gap, and the responsible party has to pay that. In this case, the responsible party is BP, and BP is going to have to pay that, make up that gap. And then the final piece, this very long title here, if you take the first letter, and we talked about this earlier today, it's very clever. If you take the first letter of each of these words, you get restore. And restore is what I oversee, and that's what Governor Perry originally asked me to do, and it's what Governor Abbott just asked me to keep doing. And it really has to do with the civil penalties that are associated with the spill. So the 2 main things that the Restore Act does. The first is it takes 80% of the civil penalties. In the past, those penalties would have gone into something called the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund. They would have been held there, and then the next spill that happened, the federal government would have pulled out of that fund and used it to respond to the next spill. Congress felt like this spill was so massive and the civil penalties were going to be so large that they wanted to take the bulk of those civil penalties, create a new trust fund, and then siphon that money back to the Gulf Coast. And so that's what they did. They said 80% of the civil penalties are going to go into this new trust fund, and it's going to go back to the Gulf Coast. So it's a major change in how we respond to oil spills, and it's only for this spill. This is not an ongoing, it's important to know it's not for future spills, it's just for this particular spill. The second thing the act did is it created the Restoration Council. I represent the state on the council. It's made up of the 5 Gulf Coast states, 6 federal agencies. The chair is the Department of Commerce. The council really oversees 2/3 of the Restore funding. And so while the state really oversees 1/3 and we have a pretty heavy hand in another third, the council ultimately oversees 2/3 of that funding. So we created a federal entity from scratch. You've probably heard in the last 2 months that there was a settlement in principle with BP. We're working through that, but where it stands right now, this is what it looks like. As far as the Restore Fund goes, we're looking at $4.4 billion that will go into the trust fund. If you break that down for the state of Texas, that represents a little over $300 million coming in bucket 1. The act is divided into 5 buckets. We're concerned with 4 of them. Bucket 1 is going to be a little over $300 million to the state of Texas. Bucket 2 is $1.3 billion to the council. We're going to get some portion of that, but we don't know how much. It's a process where the council actually selects that. We have to go in and work with the other states to figure out what we fund. Bucket 3 comes to the state. It's $1.3 billion. Again, that's based on a formula that's inside the act itself. It's not the council has to promulgate that formula in the form of a regulation, and we haven't gotten there yet. So we're working through that. And then finally, bucket 5 really has to do with academic research. It's called Centers of Excellence. In addition to the Restore Act piece, the civil penalties piece, there's other funding that's in that settlement. Up here, as far as NERDA goes, our NERDA case is being settled in this global settlement as well. That comes out to almost $240 million. We also have an economic damages piece, which comes out to $150 million. The way this works is there has to be a consent decree that's signed. It has to go out for public comment through the Federal Register and hopefully finalized in early 2016. If you take all of the money that Texas has gotten, either through criminal penalties or civil penalties, and you add it up, you're talking about over $1 billion that's coming to the Gulf Coast in the state of Texas because of the spill. It's sort of ironic to think about that through this horrific tragedy, we're getting something that's, I don't know if our coast is so big, I don't know if it goes to the level of a game changer for the coast, but it's certainly funding for the coast that we've never had before. And so when you're thinking about what we could do, let's think about it coast-wide and how what we could do could impact and change and conserve things for the future that we've never been able to even think about before. It's actually kind of exciting to be part of. So the easiest way to think about the Restore Act is with this graph right here. It might be kind of hard to see from the back, but it takes the act and then splits it up into a graphic form, which actually I think works better than trying to explain it on paper. Originally, you had this trust fund up here that had to do with the oil spill. So now you would take 80% of that and splits out into this new trust fund. So that's there. Currently, there's $800 million sitting in that trust fund because right after the spill, a company called Transocean did settle for $1 billion, and so $800 million flowed into this. That's why we're here tonight, to get this component of the Transocean settlement out the door. What that means for the state of Texas is about $56 million. That's what we're looking at right now. But the process that we put in place tonight is the process that we're planning on using going forward, not just for Transocean, but also for BP. And that money will start flowing in 2017. So the way the act is set up, you have bucket 1 over here, which is the direct component. It's 35% of this 80%, and it's divided equally between each Gulf Coast state. That money can be used for environmental projects, ecosystem restoration, storm resilience, job creation, economic development, seafood marketing. We have a lot of discretion. In fact, the most discretion under that first bucket over there. So sort of think outside the box. What are the things that we've never thought of? This is the place where you can go to find that funding, and that's what we're going to be doing. That's what we're working on right now. The second bucket, 30% of this 80%, are projects that are selected by the council. The council has projects out right now for public comment. You can go to their website and look at them. We have a number of projects in the state of Texas, but the council actually makes that decision. So as a council, we decide what gets funded. I have to take the projects forward. Whatever goes to the council for consideration has to come through the appointee, which would be me. We take that up, and then the council actually selects those projects at the end of the day. Finally, the spill impact component. 30% of this 80% goes here, and it's based on a formula that exists inside the Restore Act. The formula is built on 3 things: the distance we are from the spill, the miles of oiled shoreline that we had, and the coastal population of the state. So you take those 3 components, you roll them together, you get a formula. The council has to actually take that formula, put it into a federal regulation, put it out for public comment. They're very close to doing that. I expect we'll see something pretty soon, and you'll get an idea of what that means for funding in the state. there's a floor built into this that says each state gets at least 5% of this 30%. Texas, it's a fact that Texas was the least impacted. So through bucket 3, we are going to get less than other states. It's just a fact, and it's something that we're just going to have to deal with. But we will get money through bucket 3. This fourth bucket, we don't really need to worry about. That's really a federal funding component. But this last bucket, the Centers of Excellence Research Grants Program, takes 2.5% plus interest of this 80%, and it comes back to the state. What that means for the state of Texas with the BP money is at least $22 million that we're going to get that goes into academia, which is a pretty neat place to be. We've already awarded some of this money from the Transocean settlement as well. So it seems pretty convoluted, complicated. How do you keep up with it? The way to keep up with it is restorethetexascoast.org. It's important to get familiar with this website. You can go there. It has everything that you need to know about Deepwater Horizon and all the different streams of funding that are available. Whenever there's something new that we have, we put it up on this website. The important thing about this website, our plan is to use this website going forward as the tool for how we will take all project applications. So if you're going to apply for a project, you have to do it through this website. So this is going to be the portal from now on where that gets done. You can sign up for listservs, so if new information comes out, you'll be alerted, and you can go see what it is we've put out. The other thing is on this priorities document that we're talking about tonight, if you are too shy or you get stage fright or you haven't quite got your thoughts sort of distilled, you can go to our website up until October 9th and provide comment there on this document. So if you don't feel like doing it orally tonight, you can do that through electronically when we leave here after you hear everybody else's comments. So I would highly encourage you to check this out. We also just posted on the website this document. It's called the framework document. And the framework document is really a discussion document. The idea is we wanted to draw attention to the website, draw attention to Restore. And so this serves multiple purposes. The first is this is a PR document for the Texas coast. It says what sets us apart from other Gulf coasts. What are things that we have that other states don't have? What are things to think about as we start talking about big projects going forward for the state of Texas? So it's really a place to start the discussion. This is not something that's putting boundaries. I want to be very clear. Don't view this as a document that puts boundaries on what you can submit. This is just something to start a discussion and something that we can hand out and get people thinking about the Gulf Coast, but then it has a little discussion in the back about Restore, and it hopefully engages the public. So that's up there. You can download that as well. So the reason why we're here tonight is this priorities document that I talked about earlier. Again, the idea was let's do something simple, let's do something high level, let's do something that talks more about themes and goals than it does about specific projects and technical details. Are we thinking in the right way on a high level about what we want out of this first round of funding and out of the funding going forward for the state? So it's based on elements from several different grant processes that exist in the state. The first is processes inside TCEQ. What I heard from stakeholders early in this was that we want a competitive grant process. Well, that's what we require from TCEQ is a competitive process. And so we're taking that element and we're bringing it to the table. The two other processes we're drawing from are the Coastal Management Program and the CEAP funding. So we're taking bits and pieces of all those, rolling them together, sort of putting them back together in this sort of Frankenstein grant process. But I think that we've got the best of all of those rolled into how we're going to do this. And we've had the luxury now to see CEAP work, to see CMP work over many different iterations, and to take from that and then roll on top of that this competitive process, which I think will really push some great projects to the top. So let's get in real quick to what's in the priorities document. It's divided into 5 categories. And we thought this is done not by just me. This is done by a group of people at the state level who are involved with natural resource agencies, regulatory agencies, and then economic development agencies, since Restore does get into the economic development world a little bit. And we looked at it and said, what are the two big themes of Restore? What was Congress saying? Congress said, after the spill, the environment was hurt and the economy was hurt. Those are the things that those are the two big things that we need to go out and fix and make healthy. And so what we did was start out with economic benefits and environmental benefits, and we gave more points to those two categories to show that those are weighed a little bit heavier, that we want to see where you are in those two. It's important to note that when you add up the 5 categories, it doesn't come to 100 points. And we did that purposefully because we didn't want people to think that it's a cumulative score. I didn't want applicants to say, hey, my project got 87 and his project got 85. I should have been funded and I didn't get funded. The reason why we did this was so we could compare discretely category to category. So the idea is, on a project level, economic benefits versus economic benefits, environmental benefits versus environmental benefits, comprehensive factors versus comprehensive factors. And so each project could get technically 5 scores is sort of the way to think about it. And so that way, when you get in some of these other categories, so for example, comprehensive factors, where you get community resilience, which is really storm resilience, and then recreational and educational uses, that's what's under here. You get project logistics, which gets more into where are you on your federal permitting, or do you need to go? Do you have to go through NEPA? And it may be that you don't have to do any of that, and so there is no score here. And so we take that into consideration as we're looking at projects. So we say, okay, well, it doesn't have some of the pieces here. Now, some of these things obviously do fit, but for example, the NEPA piece in particular, it may not be a component that we have to look at. And so, so we looked at those two, and then the one more category, next slide. Community engagement. This one's really important to me because what I don't want are projects brought forward that the local communities don't support. My goal in this and what I want in this is a grassroots-driven list of projects that we ultimately come up with. I want the local communities to figure out, hey, these are the things that we're passionate about. These are the things that are really great for our community. This is where we get the best bang for the buck, the best return. This is where we get the best use. If we were to conserve something, this is where we get those long-term benefits. And so what I want to see is community support, letters. I want to be able, letters of support. I want to see, I want to be able to call presidents of school boards and ask them about, hey, are you aware of this? Are you good with it? I want to be able to talk to county judges, county commissioners, mayors, state reps, you name it, and I want to make sure that people are on board. The other piece is, what are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing county money? Are you bringing city money? But it doesn't have to be just government money. Are you bringing private foundation money? For us, right now, on the projects that we've got going through Bucket 2 and through the council, we were able to partner with a private foundation, and they've committed to funding 10% of the projects that we took forward. And so this is not just on you guys. I'm meeting with a group of pretty big foundations in mid-October in Houston. Carter Smith, the executive director of Parks and Wildlife, and myself are going to have a large dinner and sort of event with a lot of foundations to try to get them excited about this idea of the Texas coast. There's a lot of people in Texas who don't realize we have a coast when you get out to far west Texas or up to Dallas. It's a long ways away. We're a big state, and so we're reaching out to those foundations as well. But what I'd love to see is that same thing come from you guys as we move forward. Finally, there's some discretionary authority built into here, and this mirrors the Coastal Management Program grant process, which is federally approved. And the idea is that myself or the governor can look at projects and sort of step back and say, okay, from a coast-wide perspective, if we're just looking at scores, are we putting every single project that we have in one geographic region, which I don't think is the goal of this. And so do we need to sort of think about that a little bit? Or the other way I think about it is, we know we have 3 really good projects, and we have a 4th project that by itself may not be something that would get funded, but when you overlay the lens of those other 3 projects and you put it in that context and you realize, okay, now the 4 of those projects together create something really special, whether it has to do with creating natural barriers through wetland restoration that could help with the next storm, and you see that there's that missing component. That's where I think this piece comes in. And again, it's something that the feds have already approved, which is we want to be able to hold up and say we've already done this. So hopefully they'll be a little bit more lenient with us on this as we go forward. So what's going to happen is once we get the comments back from you guys tonight, so we've done this already in Beaumont, we've done it in Galveston, we've gotten comments online. After we get the comments back tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to develop what the process looks like based on that. So this priorities document is not the final draft, obviously. We'll do that, and then we'll roll it into what's called an RFGA, a request for grants applications, and that'll go out sometime maybe at the end of the year, early January, and it will have all of the the details about how we're going to score, taken off of all the comments that we've received. And that will all be lined out in this RFGA process. It'll be posted on the website, and that'll be done when the call for projects goes out, hopefully in early January. As I see it, we're going to talk about each bucket where we are moving forward. What we're talking about right now is bucket 1 for Transocean. If we can stick to the goals that I have in place, then my hope is that we'll be putting out a call for projects in January 2016. So we'll take the comments that we get tonight and the comments we get tomorrow. We'll close that comment period on October 9th. We'll work hard to try to get all of that distilled down to a scoring process that makes sense. Make sure that our application on the website mirrors that scoring process and gets to the goals that we end up with on this priorities document. And then we will put out a call for projects in January 2016. And what that looks like is the projects will come in through the website to be reviewed and scored. And then the projects will be sent over to me. I'll take a look at them. We'll put those out for public comments. The public will actually have an opportunity to say, hey, here's the projects we really like. Here's the ones we don't like. And they'll go through that whole process. And then we will put together what's called a multi-year implementation plan. This is required by the Act. It will be a finalized list of projects, and we'll submit that to the Department of Treasury, who actually oversees the trust fund. U.S. Treasury will accept the state's multi-year implementation plan. I'm very optimistic about this. They will, with our selected projects, and then at that point we will reach out to build the contracts, and we'll submit those applications for selected projects. And at that point, we will. I guess I'll flip these two. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. We'll submit the applications, and then we'll work on those contracts with the individual folks who have gotten the awards. And at that point, the process will start, and it's done on a reimbursement basis. So the way that works is, and then you through the contract, you go out, you do your project, you submit an invoice to the TCEQ. The TCEQ sends that invoice to the Department of Treasury. They have pretty tight federal guidelines that they have to abide by. They will then download the money into a state account, and then it goes straight out to you, and we can only hold it for a certain amount of time. So there's been some confusion. There is no huge download of money into a state account. This is actually sitting in a federal trust fund. It's not sitting in a state account somewhere. So it would only be in the state. If we could do it, it would be on the same day. It's ultimately pass-through dollars. So it's done on a reimbursement style. The funded priorities list. This is out for public comment right now. The first round of the FPL is out right now. Depending on where we land after public comment, we're going to get somewhere between $140 and $183 million worth of projects. These public comments are being taken now. It's important to note, I think today's the 28th? I've lost track of time. Yeah, so you have to midnight, until midnight tonight to do this. It's been open. Now, to be fair, we didn't open this today. This has been open for a long time, but this is the federal component. When we rolled out the FPL, we did that a couple months ago, and that was done in Corpus. And we had, which a lot of you guys were actually there. So I saw you there. What that means for the state of Texas, about $26 million in projects. We submitted $18.5 million in projects, and then other entities, federal agencies, submitted another $7.8 million worth of projects. So out of 140 or 183 million, wherever we end up, I'm very happy with where we are here. I think we've got a great representation, and one of the projects on there is actually a local project, which I'm really excited about, in the Bahia Grande, a land acquisition project, which will have goes a long way in connecting some really important land. It does some great things for endangered species, and there's a hydrological restoration project that's part of that too, that I think is just sort of reflecting the ongoing commitment to the Bahia Grande and that very unique, special part of the state. Bucket 3. So where we are in Bucket 3, we're working on this formula I talked about. I imagine a draft formula will be is in the works right now. That will go out for public comment eventually, and I would expect and hope that everybody here would go take a look at that formula, and feel free to comment to your heart's desire. What happens once that formula is done, then we will do a process very similar to what we're doing right now, and then we'll build a state expenditure plan. The difference here is that Treasury doesn't sign off on it, the council does. So we'll put that state expenditure plan together, and then the federal council has to say that meets the requirements that are within the act. And then once that happens, then the process will be, again, very similar, grants on a reimbursement basis through TCEQ. And then finally, the Centers of Excellence. Under Transocean, we've awarded $4 million in Centers of Excellence. $2 million went to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They're launching this One Gulf idea, and the idea is that ecosystem health is tied to human health. And so building their research around that idea, but also building a searchable database of research that anybody on the Gulf Coast can access. The way it was explained to me is that there's really great studies out there, but a lot of them are sitting on professors' shelves, and there's no way to get to them. And so the idea is to put something together that is searchable and can be used going forward for all research along the Gulf moving forward, and to build a lot of monitoring into that. The second piece is something I'm really excited about. It's the University of Houston, Rice, and NASA, bringing those three entities together and creating a world-class research facility to make sure that when we're drilling and exploring in ultra-deep water, that what we had happen 5 years ago never happens again. And so what we did was try to draw on the risk analysis that NASA brings to the table. They're probably the best in the world at it. Bring it in with some very practical programs that Rice and U of H have that are really more about getting in there and getting your hands dirty and actually putting holes in the ground, and doing it to the best that we can do it, because we're not going to stop deepwater exploration. In fact, we're doing it all over the Gulf right now. But the goal is, let's do it right and let's do it safely so we never see this happen again. Norway has something similar. Brazil has something similar. We don't have anything like this in the United States, and no other state is contemplating doing this. So the idea is that we're going to build something world-class that will have a global impact. So we're pretty excited about that. So there's $4 million split between those two. Again, there's $22 million more baseline that's out there, because there's still going to be some interest that comes off that. So it'll actually be probably a little bit more than $22 million for additional centers of excellence in the future. Finally, next steps. What we're looking at right now, after Katrina, Louisiana did a coastal master plan. And one of the things that I don't think they ever thought they'd have the money to build out the plan, but after Deepwater Horizon, they're going to get a significant amount of money. And one of the things they're doing is working their way through that plan and that's their roadmap for everything that they're funding. I don't think we're going to get to that level of detail about specific projects that we need, because they're talking about things like rerouting the Mississippi River. We're not doing that sort of stuff. But at a more 30,000-foot level, what are the projects that we could do that have a coast-wide impact? How can we think about projects where something we do in the Laguna Madre has an impact on something in Matagorda Bay, which also then has an impact on Galveston Bay? What about turtle populations in South Texas, and how does that impact what's going on in the blue water and in other Gulf Coast states? How do we think about our whole Gulf as one system, and not only from an ecosystem perspective, but from an economic perspective? So the Intracoastal Waterway runs the entire length of the state. What could we do there? Are there opportunities? So there's these things about these sort of higher level things that we could think about. Well, now that we have this funding, which is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity as far as funding goes, how can we make that go the furthest and have the biggest bang for the buck? So we're looking at doing a coastal master plan. We can use part of Bucket 3 to actually pay for that plan. We haven't decided whether we're going to do it yet. The reason why it's a perfect time to think about it is that the BP money doesn't actually start flowing until 2017. So we have a year to do this, and we have some other work that's already been done by the GLO, Heart Research Institute, that we could go draw on as the foundation. So I don't think it would take us 3 years. I think we could compress that time element by drawing on what some other state agencies have already done. So I think there's some opportunity there. Please, if you're not going to say something on the microphone, I encourage you to go to the website and submit comments through the website. Any feedback you can give us is helpful. I want this to be transparent. I want it to come from the public. After all, the projects that we're picking from are going to be coming from you guys. And so I want to know that how to score those projects, and are we looking at them through the right lens? Sign up for the listserv, visit our website, and I promise if you hit the Contact Us button, we will get back to you, which is probably the biggest goal. You know, if a state agency is actually responsive, that's huge. So anyway, so with that being said, I am going to be quiet, and I'm not going to say anything else. I may ask you a question or two if you're making a point, and I want to know a little bit more about it. But with that, I'm just going to be quiet, and Tara's going to come back up and sort of take over the helm. And I know it's kind of awkward that I'm sitting here and you're on this microphone, and it's just kind of an awkward setup that I'm the only one here. But we're webcasting this, and we're recording everything, so it's just very helpful to do it this way. So just bear with the awkwardness. Thank you.